Szanowni Państwo, niezależnie od tego, kogo uważamy za winnego, czy producentów takich oprogramowań, czy nas samych, użytkowników, którzy być może nie potrafią się dostatecznie zabezpieczyć i tego, jak korzystają z aplikacji i dostępu do internetu, na pewno warto jest posłuchać wystąpienia naszego następnego gościa. Jest to znany na całym świecie aktywista, który staje w obronie naszych cyfrowych praw obywatelskich i zajmuje się szeroko rozumianą kwestią kapitalizmu inwigilacyjnego.
So, please give a warm welcome to Aral Balkan. Aral, stage is yours.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you. Good morning. We have a problem, and that problem is called surveillance capitalism. What is this? Surveillance capitalism is the interaction between surveillance and capitalism. Capitalism is about the accrual of wealth. Surveillance is about the accrual of information. What happens when those with accrued wealth invest it in mechanisms of surveillance, which then gives them intimate insight about every one of our lives, which they then use to accrue more wealth? We get this feedback loop that is surveillance capitalism. It's given us a world in which a handful of individuals knows everything about us, and we don't know anything about them. In the movie The Matrix, people live in a virtual space while their bodies are physically farmed. Their biological selves are farmed in a physical space. We today live in the matrix inverted, where we live in a physical space, but we're increasingly being farmed from a virtual space. And those doing the farming, like Mark Zuckerberg, will be the first to tell you, privacy is dead. Don't worry about it. But remember, he's talking about your privacy, not his privacy. Because when Mark buys a house, he buys the 4 houses around his house also, because his privacy is alive and well, thank you very much. It's yours that he is actively engaged in killing. Because he, at his company, Facebook, has literally 60 people working on reading your mind. That's part of their business model, right? And it's not just these corporations collecting all of this data. That's not good, right? They're sharing it with governments. Here you can see the heads of some of the top tech companies in Silicon Valley at the same table as then President-elect Donald Trump. And who you sit at the table with matters. Here's Tim Cook, CEO of trillion-dollar company Apple Incorporated, sitting at the same table during Davos as far-right Brazilian President Jair Bolsonaro. Does that matter? Well, let's take a look at another photograph from a little earlier in our history. In this photograph, the gentleman at the very back is Thomas J. Watson, CEO of IBM, sitting at the same table as someone you might recognize. That's Hitler. Why? Why was Thomas J. Watson sitting at the same table as Hitler? Because they were working together. And actually, Thomas J. Watson was decorated by Hitler for services provided to the Third Reich by IBM. He got a medal, one of the first, a very, very special medal from Hitler. What kind of services? In his book, IBM and the Holocaust, Edwin Black says, IBM maintained a customer site known as the Hollerith Department in virtually every concentration camp to sort or process punch cards and track prisoners. Okay, what else did they do? Well, they had to create the codes, Hollerith, named after IBM's founder. They needed to print the cards. They needed to configure the machines, train the staff, continuously maintain these fragile systems at the concentration camps every 2 weeks. What kind of codes are we talking about here? What are these codes? Well, 001 was Auschwitz. 002 was Buchenwald. 003 was Dachau. 3 meant that you were homosexual. 9, that you were antisocial. 12, that you were a gypsy. And 8, that you were a Jew. They also describe how you were murdered. 4 was execution. And 6 was special treatment, which was a euphemism for the gas chamber. In his book, Edwin Black says, international business machines and its president, Thomas J. Watson, committed genocide by any standard. But this is not what scares me the most. It's what he says next that scares me the most. It was never about the anti-Semitism. It was never about the National Socialism. It was always about the money. Business was their middle name. Well, business is still their middle name. So what are they doing today? Have you heard of their AI, artificial intelligence? What did they name their AI? They named it Watson. Who did they name it after? Thomas J. Watson. But we're not talking about rooms full of huge computers that are less powerful than the phones you have in your pockets. We're talking about a huge amount of data and a huge amount of processing power today. We're on the cusp. IBM's on the cusp of having a quantum computer. Google's on the cusp of having that. And that will change the game completely. So they named their AI after their president, who was decorated by Hitler. Think about that. What else are they doing today? It turns out that they were working with the Philippine strongman Rodrigo Duterte, who, when he was mayor, he had death squads, he had killing squads as mayor. They were working with him. Turns out they were working with the US government on drone strikes. This is what they're working on today. And when Donald Trump was elected, their current CEO was the first to write him an open letter saying, "Sir, how can we make all of your dreams come true? How can we help you?" Right? They're not far right. IBM is not far right. IBM doesn't support Trump. They weren't Nazis. They only cared about the money. They only care about the money. That should be okay, right? Well, for one of their employees, it wasn't okay. Elizabeth Wood, who resigned, she said, "I found it terrifying. Her letter made me take a look at the work I was doing and say, why? What am I contributing to?" And this is a question that all of you in this room have to ask yourselves on a daily basis, especially if some of you are involved in this toxic business model. I know, and some of you are not. But you need to ask yourselves this question. Where you work, the work you do does not define you as a human being. You get to decide what that is. So you need to ask yourselves, why? What am I contributing to? And if you don't like the answer to that question, quit. You have a lot of privilege. There's a lot of privilege in this room. I'm not telling that to people who make coffee outside. I'm telling it to you. Quit. Do something different. Work somewhere where you can answer that question and look yourself in the mirror. She continued, "When the president-elect follows through on his repeated threats to create a public database of Muslims, what will IBM do? Your letter neglects to mention." This is, of course, naive. Facebook already has a database of Muslims, right? Google already has it. We already have these databases. Whether we're sharing them is a different matter. And IBM responded, bless their souls, yeah? They said, "IBM would not work on such a hypothetical project. Our company has long-standing values and a strong track record of opposing discrimination against anyone on the basis of race, gender, sexual orientation, or religion. That perspective has not changed and never will." So, what about the Holocaust? IBM, that little blip in our history, remember? So they also responded to that. A different representative, Carol Makovich, said, "IBM does not have much information about this period. We are a technology company. We are not historians." Well, fuck you, Carol. I think it's time that we all became historians to some degree, so at the very least we can avoid the catastrophic atrocities of our very, very, very near past. It's not just IBM. This is the business model of Silicon Valley. Have you guys heard of a little company called SoftBank? Anyone heard of them? If not, get ready for some new nightmares. This is Masayoshi Son. Masayoshi Son is the CEO of SoftBank. And this man has a $100 billion venture capital fund, the biggest venture capital fund in the world. Where did he get all that money from? Well, it turns out 45 billion of it comes from Mohammed bin Salman, the crown prince of Saudi Arabia. Now, if that name sounds familiar to you, you might have heard of some of his hobbies, which include having journalists brutally murdered and then chopped into little bits inside of his embassies. He kind of likes that for a little bit of Saturday fun. So 45 billion of that money comes from him. It's not just him. You know, other names that you might have heard of, like Apple, etc., are okay with investing alongside this man. Why? Because Masayoshi Son has a vision. We love that sort of talk, don't we? He has a vision. What's his vision? What is this man's vision? It's always men, huh? That Masayoshi Son's vision is a future where every time we use our smartphone, call a taxi, order a meal, stay in a hotel, make a payment, receive medical treatment, we will be doing so in a data transaction with a company that belongs to the SoftBank family. As Son likes to say, whoever controls data controls the world. So what we have to do is to make sure it's not him. What we have to do is to make sure it's not SoftBank or Google or Facebook, because we have to understand what data actually is, right? Cambridge Analytica, a small company with a tiny subset of Facebook's data, was able to influence the outcome of the presidential elections in the United States and the Brexit referendum in the United Kingdom. Now, they did that with a tiny subset of Facebook's data. You tell me what Facebook can do with the full set and all of their algorithms. Because Cambridge Analytica and Facebook have the exact same business model. Here's how it goes. Facebook has two audiences, not one. They have their users. We call them users, right? There's two industries in the world that call the people who use their products users. One is us, and the other are drug dealers, right? They have their users. Now, that's you. That's all of you, right? You don't pay them anything, and somehow they make billions. How? Because they also have their customers. Now, the customers are the ones that pay them for what? Well, let's see how they do it. They track everything you do, every move you make. On Facebook, on the web, they have eyes all over the web. Every time you go to a website, has a Facebook like button, has a Facebook tool, they're tracking you. But off the web as well. They buy data from third-party data brokers, so they will buy data from your local pharmacy and know what drugs you're buying, what medicines you're buying. They will buy data from anyone that's going to sell it to them. And they combine all of this together to create the really valuable thing, and that's your profile. So what they're doing is they're profiling you. That's where their algorithms come into it. They're constantly analyzing you. They want to know who you are. They want to know who you are better than you know who you are. That's their business. Because that is what they monetize with their customers. That's what their customers pay them for. Now, don't get me wrong. They don't sell you, right? You'll hear people say, oh, they sell me. No. If I own you, I'm never going to sell you. You're way too valuable to me. I'm just going to own you forever, and I'm going to rent access to you for the rest of your life. And I'm going to use everything I know about you to manipulate your behavior for the rest of your life, right? In Slavery 1.0, we used to own people, their whole bodies. right? And we sold them, we traded them sometimes, but we kept them and we used them, right? This is slavery 2.0. I don't need your body anymore, right? I can own everything else about you that makes you who you are. This is legal. But guess what? Slavery 1.0 was legal too. Yeah, think about that. I call this system people farming, because that is what these companies are. Google, Facebook are factory farms for human beings. Not just Google, Facebook, Snapchat, put in any other new startup that has venture capital. It's all the same. This is the business model of Silicon Valley. This is the business model of mainstream technology. And just last week, Amnesty International put out a 60-page report in which they say the surveillance-based business model of Facebook and Google is inherently incompatible with the right to privacy, a human right, and poses a systemic threat to a range of other rights. This is the leading human rights agency, not-for-profit, in the world, right? Saying that Google, Facebook, this business model of ad tech is fundamentally incompatible with human rights. They are violating human rights by their very nature, by the very reason they exist. You work at these companies, that's what you're helping to do. They go on to say, Facebook and Google must not be allowed to dictate how we live online. And let me tell you, there's no difference between online and offline. You're one person, you have one life. It is time to reclaim this vital public space for everyone rather than a few powerful, unaccountable companies in Silicon Valley. Because really what they don't say here is, we think Facebook is a public space. It's not. We think it's a park where you can go and speak your mind. No, it's a shopping mall. You're in Mark Zuckerberg's shopping mall. And the only rights you have there are the rights Mark Zuckerberg gives you. You have no free speech rights in a shopping mall. If they don't like the t-shirt you're wearing in someone's shopping mall, they can throw you out. So we got to stop mixing up these things. This is a greater systemic issue. It is the world of venture capital, startups, exits, clouds, innovation. We love that word. Unicorns, don't they sound cute? Right? And Ray Kurzweil's church of exponential growth. Now, I drew a little illustration to show you how I feel about this. This is a cloud throwing up a rainbow on a unicorn. But it's that last bit that scares me the most. Exponential growth. This is our criteria in this system. Growth, quarter on quarter, exponential, endless growth with finite resources. Let me tell you what that looks like. You take a petri dish. You put some nutrients into that petri dish. You also put some bacteria into that petri dish, and you seal that petri dish. Generation upon generation, the bacteria will consume the nutrients, and they will grow exponentially, great success story, until they reach their most successful state 1 or 2 generations before they go extinct because of lack of resources. This is what exponential growth with finite resources looks like. If you want me to spell it out for you, the petri dish is the world, we are the bacteria, and that is the problem. So if I left it there, I think a lot of you would not like me very much. Thank you. We got up at what hour to come and listen to this and hate our lives? So let's not. What can we do about this? We made the problem, all of us, either by doing it actively or by turning a blind eye. We created the problem. We can solve the problem, all of us, not me. I'm not going to solve this problem. Don't pat yourselves on the back. Oh, Aral's going to do it. It's great. No, I'm not going to solve this. Either we're all going to solve it or it's not going to get solved. In technology, what does that mean? This is a social problem, but in terms of technology, what does it mean? It means at the very base, we, the people, individuals, must own and control the data. This is crucial, because this is what data is. If I have a block, a little plastic block, and I have enough data about this block, I can take a 3D printer and I can create an almost exact replica of that block. Now imagine what I can do if I have enough data about you. And again, I don't want to 3D print you. Right? but I want to own a copy of you. That's my business model, if I'm Facebook or Google. We have to begin to understand that data about us is not some abstract concept. If there's enough of it, it begins to approach us. With the right algorithms and with enough data, we begin to simulate people. So the question becomes who owns and who controls that? So let's go through this because this is the key. It's very simple. People will tell you privacy is very complicated. It's so nuanced. No. Those people have a vested interest in you thinking that the problem is complicated. The problem is very simple. 1, who should own and control the data? Let's do this together. The question you need to ask is, who is it data about? Data is just information. Is it about you? Yes? Then you. It's that simple. But there's data about the world around us as well. Who should own and control that? Well, we all should. All of us together, the commons. What do you not see here? Should corporations own and control the data? No. If you've been listening, if you've been paying attention, you probably understand, no. So other people say other things. Well, maybe nations should own and control the data instead. Fuck no, right? So Jeremy Corbyn proposes that in the UK we should have a British digital corporation like the British Broadcasting Corporation, and they should own everyone's data. No. The only thing worse than a corporation knowing everything about you is a government with a military and a police force and guns and tanks knowing everything about you, right? Let's not jump out of the frying pan into the fire here. Let's not do that. So some other people say, okay, well, nations, okay, that's scary. Okay, especially on the left now, on the kind of traditional socialist left, they say cities. Cities sound safe. Right? Cities, we all live in cities, it's cool. Should cities own and control the data? So Yevgeny Morozov and Francesca Bria, for example, in Barcelona, they have this idea for the city owning all of this data. They want to deploy socialized big data. What the fuck does that mean? What is socialized big data? Let me tell you what it is. Let me tell you what all of this is, right? So no. Let me tell you what every one of these people is saying to you. What Mark Zuckerberg and Sergey Brin and Elon Musk and Peter Thiel and all of these corporate people, what they're saying to you is the same as what Jeremy Corbyn is saying to you, is the same as what Yevgeny and Francesca are saying to you. They're saying trust us because we trust us. Because we trust the people around us. And you may or you may not. But what we're building is the infrastructure for fascism. So let's say I know Yevgeny, I know Francesca. Let's say I trust them and Barcelona builds all of this infrastructure for knowing everything about you. The next government is far right. The next government are Nazis, neo-Nazis. What happens? We've given them the control room. We've already built the infrastructure for them to do whatever they want to do. So it's not about whether I trust you. It's about, do you even trust the next person to have that power, the next person to have that power, the next group? So should you own and control your data? Yes. It's seriously this simple. Because what we're facing right now, we're facing a couple of emergencies, right? You hear about the climate emergency. Well, I'm going to add 2 more. We're facing a personhood crisis, a personhood emergency. And we need to get out of this. We can regulate to some degree, and we can replace this system. But we need to do something. So we are already regulating, right? We have the GDPR. Who's heard of the GDPR here? Who hates the GDPR? It makes my life so difficult. Right? If it makes your life difficult, you're doing some nasty shit, let me tell you that, okay? General data protection regulation. Data protection is great. But it assumes that the current system is the only system we can have. That the way we build technology today is the only way to build technology, and that's not true. It is one toxic way of building technology, in which a handful of people become billionaires by exploiting everyone else. We can build technology differently, but if we're going to regulate, we need to think beyond data protection. Because data protection is just saying, please, sir, be kind. Don't do bad things to us. We know you can, and we love you. You're so powerful. But please be kind. Don't hurt us. No, fuck that. We can go beyond that, right? How? We need to, first of all, know what they're doing. What are their algorithms doing? What are they doing to analyze and aggregate? And what information are they deriving from it? So algorithmic transparency, we should be regulating for that. Some people are starting to talk about this. But if you want to kill surveillance capitalism dead tomorrow, we have to start thinking about and acting on data minimization legislation. Do not collect the data to begin with if you can build the technology that way. So what we need is a GDMR, General Data Minimization Regulation. And here's what that looks like. So this is GDMR. 3 clauses and we kill surveillance capitalism. 1, if your data and algorithms can be kept on your own devices, your own phones, your own computers, while building technology, when they're building their technologies, if they can build it so you keep your own data, you keep your own algorithms on your own devices, they must build it that way. Any device that has your data should be end-to-end encrypted or must be end-to-end encrypted. And 3, only you hold the keys to those locks. You pass this tomorrow in the European Union, you kill surveillance capitalism tomorrow. Do not hold your breaths. There is no political will for this whatsoever right now. Why? We're corrupt. Lobbying. These same companies spend millions and millions of euros every year talking to the people at the European Union, talking to the policymakers who should be protecting your rights. And these very policymakers who should be regulating Google and Facebook and these other companies, in 3 years' time, through revolving doors, will want to be working there and will accept jobs there. We can't regulate them because we have doctors in the cigarette ads in technology. People who say that they're protecting your rights, who care about your rights, but they're in bed with these same companies. What kind of things? So we have conferences like CPDP, Data Protection and Democracy. Sounds amazing, sounds like they're talking about everything. Who's sponsoring this? Oh. And when I call this out, they go, oh, but that doesn't change anything. No, it does. You are legitimizing them. You are whitewashing them. You're saying it's okay. You are being the doctors in the cigarette ads. Companies like organizations like Free Software Foundation, which all of their legitimacy don't care about having their logo next to Google's. Mozilla. Who knows Mozilla here? Who uses Firefox? Mozilla. Mozilla's going to save us, right? They care about our privacy, don't they? They do. They do. They care. That's why the default search engine is Google, right? That's why. They really care about your privacy. No, that's not why. It's because they get almost all of their money from Google, right? Just follow the money. The analysis here isn't very deep. It doesn't need to be. You don't need conspiracy theories. Just look at who's paying them, right? This guy says, I worked there 8 years. 90% of Mozilla's income came from Google. They get hundreds of millions of dollars every year from Google. If Google and other ad tech companies stopped paying Mozilla, Mozilla would not exist. So Mozilla is not what you think it is, right? And then we have idiot countries like Denmark who send ambassadors to Silicon Valley. How daft, how stupid do you have to be as a democratically elected government to give up the only leverage you have against a corporation? You're not more powerful. Denmark is not more powerful than Facebook when it comes to spending power, the government of Denmark. They're more powerful because they have democratic legitimacy. When you put them as equals and send an ambassador instead of regulating them, you're saying, okay, here's the last piece of power I have. Please, Mark, be kind. And he will be kind. He's a kind king, isn't he? We have organizations like Singularity University. Who's heard of Singularity University? Who wants to study at Singularity University one day? If you're really lucky. Anyone here? You've not heard of this? It's really big, especially again in Denmark for some reason, and in Silicon Valley. It's not a university. It's not they call themselves a university. It's basically a lobbying front for Silicon Valley. They come, they teach their way of doing things, and they've got the Prime Minister of Denmark's ear. Or at the very least, let's do this if we want to regulate them, right? At the very least, let's do this. Let's not, after a hearing in which you're supposed to hold them to account, like this Swedish member of European Parliament, let's not take a fucking selfie with them. Can we start there? Can we at least start there in order to, regulate and control these companies? Because we're not going to get there if MEPs are taking selfies with Mark. If it's like a day at Disneyland, we're not going to get there, right? And these are your elected representatives at the European Parliament. You should be asking them, what the fuck are you doing? What is this? Seriously. You're supposed to be protecting our rights. That's law. That's legislation. We can also regulate with technology. One of the things that my not-for-profit organization does is we have an app that you can get off of the stores. It's free and open source, as everything we do is. And it blocks their trackers. It's called Better. So it's a little thing. It's like cleaning a sewer. I don't want to do this. I really don't. We have to go through all of the web pages that we find, the most popular ones, find all these trackers. Sometimes there are 70, 80 trackers per page, and we need to write rules to block them. It's a horrible job. I wish I didn't have to do this. But there are tools. We can regulate that way. We can also regulate socially, though, and this is very powerful. When Google wanted to open a campus in Berlin, people got together and they created a movement called Fuck Off Google. And it worked. It worked. They delayed it for 5 years. Remember, trillion-dollar interests don't go away. They rest and then they come back, right? But it is changing opinions. There was an article in Wired recently where a Facebook employee said, when I joined Facebook in 2016, people would stop and say, it's so cool that you work for Facebook. That's not the case anymore. It made it hard to go home for Thanksgiving, right? So that's good. This is what we need to do. This is very powerful. Eric Schmidt, who was the CEO of Google, and he was their chairman for a long time. When I was talking to him in London a few years ago, he said to me, if we ever become too evil, we won't find anyone to work for us. Well, tell you what, Eric, it's happening. It's beginning to happen. And it's going to accelerate. We already see it, especially in the States. So this is powerful. But we must also replace them. Regulation can only limit the harms. We need ethical alternatives. We already have some stopgaps, things that aren't perfect that you can use today. So what, for example? Well, okay, Apple. We know Apple has no problems getting into bed with the Saudi Arabian prince. We know Apple doesn't have a problem taking VPN apps off the App Store in China when China asks it to. But Apple has a competitive advantage in privacy because they make their money by selling products, right? No trillion-dollar company is your friend, don't get me wrong. But when Tim Cook sells you an iPhone for fuck knows how much, he's happy. He's made his profit. You throw that phone away, he's happy. You buy a Samsung phone, you buy a Huawei phone, whatever. Google has not made their money, right? They make their money when you turn the phone on. They start making their money when they can start watching you and they can track you and profile you and manipulate you. That's how they make their money, right? So at least know the differences so you can protect yourselves. This is not a long-term solution. There are private messengers like Wire and Signal that you can use. But again, these aren't perfect. Wire just moved to the States from Europe, and they didn't tell anyone, and they became a holding company. So the business side of it corrupts everything in the end. But there's stopgaps. You can use Fastmail instead of Gmail. Fastmail just make their money by selling you an email account. If you're really, if you want to have encrypted email, you can use something like Tutanota. If you want to see lots of these sort of alternatives, look at switching.social. Software. It used to be switching.social. Switching.software. And you'll find a whole list of things, alternatives to this, alternatives to that. They're not going to be perfect right now, right? But a lot of them are usable, and you can start today to kind of pull yourself back. One of those is an alternative to Twitter called Mastodon that I use. And it's basically like Twitter, but you can own your own Twitter. And you can talk to everybody else's Twitter. Like you can have a twitter.com, I can have my twitter.com. On my twitter.com, there can be 100 people, or on yours, it might just be you, but we can all talk to each other and to the thousands of other twitter.coms. That's Mastodon, right? I want to show you a quick demo of it right now, just to show you how usable these alternatives are, right? So I'm just going to go into my web browser, and I'm going to go to mastodon.aral, okay? This is my Mastodon. It is just for me, but you can see there are people, I'm seeing their timelines, right? I'm seeing their toots, we call them, coming in. Because it's federated, I can talk to all the other Mastodons. So what I'm gonna do is, in my phone, let's do this. I'm on Mastodon on my phone as well, so let me just make sure that that's loaded. I am going to take a photo of all of you, and then you should see it there as well. So, ooh, I don't wanna go in my photos, I haven't already taken a photo of you. Let me take a photo of all of you. So put on your best faces. There we go. Say cheese. Nobody's saying cheese. Okay, how do you say cheese in Polish? All right, I'm gonna use that photo and I'm gonna say, hello, Warsaw, because of course you're Warsaw. And toot. So I just toot it from here, and there we are. And my people that are following me are seeing that on It's just like Twitter, right? The difference? Jack Dorsey doesn't tell you what you can say, what you can't say. Jack Dorsey doesn't decide who is blocked, who's not blocked. Who decides? We do. That's the difference. And it's a big, big difference. So, there are also alternatives, though. And that's really important. So, we have alternatives, real alternatives that we can build. That's what I'm working on. Now, let me tell you what I'm not working on, because I hear this a lot. One, I hear people saying, oh, yeah, so they shouldn't own your data. You should own your data so you can sell it. And I'll help you sell it, and I'll take a percentage. No, no. We didn't get rid of slavery because we thought, hey, you know, people should sell their own bodies. You can do that if you want to, right? We did it because we thought that people deserve dignity. This is the exact wrong reason for doing it. What else? It's not about blockchain. Fucking blockchain, seriously. Beware of blockchain oil salespeople, okay? Blockchain solves one very specific problem. It solves the problem of, if we have one database, how can we make 1 billion copies of this database and guarantee that they are all the same? This is a problem you have if you're trying to create a currency, and especially if you're a right libertarian who then wants to hold some of that currency and become a billionaire, okay? And the way that we prove that is by destroying the environment through a system called proof of work. So this is not what I'm talking about. So what am I talking about? What we're building as an alternative is a move away from the centralized systems, like Facebook, where Facebook is sovereign. We already have federated systems, which kind of devolves that power a little bit. But in federated systems, Mastodon.social, the first Mastodon instance, has hundreds of thousands of people. They're still very powerful. Mastodon.aral, the one you saw that I have, has one, me, right? So I can block instances, but if Mastodon.social blocks me, then that really limits my reach. And who decides who blocks who on Mastodon.social, or which instances they block? Eugen, who runs Mastodon.social, who wrote Mastodon. So it's a good step. But what if we took this? I have my own instance of one. And what if we made the whole network that way, where each one of us owned and controlled their own piece of the internet, and we could talk to one another, but where we made the rules for ourselves, and where we could have true privacy, which is a very simple concept. What do I keep to myself? What do I share with others? That's all privacy is. Do you have the right to make that decision or not? So here, I might have my own domain, you might have your domain, they might have their domain. We can all talk to each other, we can find each other through this. And freedom increases as we go down. This is about network topologies, right? It sounds technical, but the future of your human rights and democracy itself depends on us understanding this. We can't be blind to it anymore. As DHH, David Heimler Hansen, he is the author of Ruby on Rails. He is a co-founder of Basecamp. He tweeted recently, "We don't need more big tech. We're choking.
suffocating on big tech. When there's no market share below all of it that is enough, you get what we've been getting. It's time for an ethical reboot. It's time for small tech. And that's what I'm building. I agree with him completely because I'm one of the co-founders of the Small Technology Foundation. So we have been saying this for a while now, but it's really great. Small technology is the antidote. It's the antidote to big tech. They're everyday tools for everyday people that increase human welfare, not corporate profits. So we can build technology differently. What would it look like? Well, it would have to be easy to use because these are everyday things. You don't think of a chair as technology. A chair is technology, but it's so easy to use. It's part of our lives now. Same with our phones, same with our apps. They're personal things. They're for people. I don't care about startups. I don't care about corporations. I don't care about enterprises. I care about people. They're for people. They're private by default, which is the only definition of privacy that matters. They're under share-alike licenses. What does that mean? If I create a tool, I make it available freely, and you can see how I made it. You can't take that, invest $2 million on top of it, and close it. You can't enclose it. It's share-alike, and it's open. They are peer-to-peer. So we talk to each other directly. We don't need Mark Zuckerberg in the middle. They're interoperable. So you don't have to use the thing I made. Someone else can make a different version of it, but we can all talk. The Fediverse is not just Mastodon. There is PixelFed, which is like Instagram. There is PeerTube, which is like YouTube. But all of these can talk to each other because they all speak the same protocol, the same language, ActivityPub. That's interoperability. There's no lock-in there. There's zero knowledge. They know nothing about you. And they're non-commercial. We need to stop thinking about everything as markets. If our only view about the world is that it is one big market, then all of us are commodities. We are not. We are more than markets. We are more than consumers. We are people. We are human beings first and foremost. They are non-commercial and non-colonial. When designing these things, we can't think, hey, I have all the knowledge, I'm going to design for all these dumb people. That's what we do normally, right? Designer, user, developer, user. It's a very small step to dumb user from there. No, we must build diverse teams and design for ourselves, so we're designing for a diverse audience by proxy. That's non-colonial design. It's the opposite of the, I know it's ironic, white man standing up telling you what to do, right? Which is what's happening right now. Sorry. We have to be inclusive. We have to include a wide variety of people in designing these things, and that's part of it. So what kind of things? Well, imagine an internet where you have your own place at your own domain, and all of your secret information, all of your private information is on your own devices, and you only have the key to that. But there is a web node where you can be reached, a domain that you can be reached from at any time. And it's always on, but it knows nothing. It's just a conduit. And it says, oh, here, to your phone, here's some information to your laptop, right? This is the system we're building, where you can be public. So I can go to my own domain, I can be public, I can use it like Twitter or Facebook. But if I want to be private with you, we're private. There's no mark in the middle. And this is a long process. We need to build developer tools so that the developers can build the everyday tools. The developers, the only tools they have today are the ones made by Google and Facebook. So I, this year, made a tool called Site.js that makes it simpler than ever to get your own website up and running if you're a developer. I'm going to show it to you very quickly. This is like as technical as it's going to get right now, but I think you'll see how simple it actually is. So I'm just going to move this over here. This is how quick it is to set up your own website, all right? So I'm in Terminal. Excellent. So I'm going to SSH into my server. This is mydemo.site. I'm going to create a demo folder. I know, code at a marketing conference. What the fuck? And then I'm going to create a page. So I'm just going to say, echo, hello, NextM Warsaw. And I'm going to create a web page. Very simple web page. And then I'm going to go and install site.js. How do I do that? I'm just going to go to sitejs.org, and I'm going to copy this line of code, paste it here. Done. Remember, this is a tool for developers, but it's not been 30 seconds yet. And then I'm just going to say site enable, right? So now, if I go to my demo.site, look, it's taking a bit longer here, first of all, because it's getting security certificates automatically. This is stuff that normally takes hours for people to set up. And hello, NextM Warsaw. We just set up a website, right? This has not been this easy ever. So today, we have the means, like through tools like this, developers can use these to build their own tools for the future. It doesn't have to be a simple site like this. Now, take out your phones, and I want you to go to pi0.aral. Okay? pi0.aral. I want you to go there, and you'll probably see something like this. Now, I'm just going to say Aral here. I'm going to say, hello, anyone else here? I'm going to send that. Come on, go ahead, say something. You can do this. Is there a good reception in the room? Somebody say something on their phones. Come on. Oh, hi, hello, great. You know, this is running on site.js. And this could be something where you're having conversations with your friends, just like Facebook Messenger. This is a very simple demo. And it could be running in a cloud somewhere, or it could be running in your pocket, in your hand, because that's where it's running right now. You are talking in this. It has a tiny little SIM card, a data card. It has a tiny little computer in it and a battery, right? But I can own it and I can control it. I have it in my hands. One of you, could you come up to the stage? Can you come up to the stage for me? There we go. There you go. Hold it in your hand. Don't press this black button or it'll go, poof, okay? Just hold it in your hand. Pass it around. Pass it around to everyone else. Just pass it around. I want you to feel what it feels like to hold the web in your hand, right? And now realize this. All of you have this device in your pockets already, right? What is it? A data card? A battery? And does that sound familiar to you? And a computer? Why can't we have our own Facebooks on these devices? Because they don't want us to. Not because it's not possible. It is possible, and we're making it possible. So, to conclude, the world today faces a lot of problems. We have a climate emergency. We have a habitat emergency. We're literally looking down the path of our own extinction as a species. And we have a personhood emergency, and we have a democracy emergency. We need to move beyond the bullshit, people. We need to move beyond this toxic model. And again, I don't care who you work for today. I don't care what it is you do. You are more than that. If we want to build a future where we have human rights and we have democracy, we need to protect those. We need to work together to protect those. Because that is the future I want to live in. A future where we explore our potential as a species among the stars. And that is the future that I believe we can create together if we want to. It starts with you. So please join me. Let's do this. Thank you.